1 minute no one watches anyways. I think
What's
we're
live. We are live. We are live. So if you're watching that, then he was wrong. Super excited to have you guys here. We have an awesome guest that we will introduce soon. And I have to click over to our video.
You like my Wiz Khalifa beat, don't you?
It gets me going every morning. So we have an awesome guest today that I want to just bring right on because we're going to start just we had an awesome podcast and we're just going to talk like really all things marketing, very advisor specific today, really focused, lots of experience coming from this one interview and talk that we had that we're going to even have this morning. So I'm super excited for everybody joining us. Looks like we got 4 people here, maybe me and you and Penny and then one other person. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to
Penny Phillips in the building, man. Let's go.
Penny Phillips is here. And I would like Penny to obviously introduce herself, although a lot of you already know Penny and watch her videos and watch her on LinkedIn like we all do, which is why we brought her here. So I will bring Penny on. How are you?
Good morning, Penny.
Hello. Good morning, guys.
I appreciate you spending some
Ryan,
time with us.
Yeah. Is that a haircut I see, Ryan?
Yeah, I did it. That's what I left to go do. I literally ran. No, I got my haircut a little while ago. It was especially from when we talked last time. I got made fun of from my from the girl who cuts my hair. I went 6 weeks. I had a real COVID haircut going, so it was a little much.
Love it.
How about you, Corey?
We got some good.
I don't need to cut my hair so much.
Corey with the fresh face today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mine's a little easier to keep up, but sun's out. I can see the sun peeking in your windows, Penny, and awesome Friday. Excited to have you on, and this will be great, guys. Listening, everyone listening, get comments in, get questions in. We'll go any direction that anybody wants to go, but I think just from the start, let's kick this off with, just how are things going, Penny? With advisors during this kind of COVID environment, just like what's a 90-second kind of overview of what the hell's going on with advisors, what you're hearing.
Yeah, and we got some great guests already in. Keith had an amazing video yesterday, Keith Wilson. I have to shout him out. I was hysterical laughing. I watched it a million times. But yeah, so that's the million-dollar question, right? The number of times, and Sharon's here, amazing woman and advisor. I've been asked that a million times during COVID, and good morning. My answer is a little bit different. I don't think a whole lot has changed from our perspective as coaches and consultants. Like the best in the business got better. The advisors who just sort of try to do the bare minimum continue to do that, and then the advisors who really struggle to adapt and change have had a really difficult time this year. So I don't think we learned a lot about advisor behavior. I think what we did learn is that a lot of the belief systems that advisors have held on to about not wanting to have team members work from home, clients don't like digital interactions. I think we've seen all those things be proven wrong. So that's the biggest learning for me and for advisors, I think, this year.
That's really great. I feel that same way. It's almost a situation where we learn more about ourselves than anything by being here and what we're really supposed to be doing. And I think a lot of business owners were challenged in the sense that they were forced in this situation, just like a lot of people who weren't using technology. They were forced to do it. We have family, Zoom meetings now of relatives and grandmothers that never did that. But now we're all getting together on Zoom. They want to see the kids and they can't. They're from different states. And now here we are all on Zoom like we're doing here, hanging out. So everybody had a little bit of adjustments. Exactly. And I think it pushed us in the right way.
Do we think that things are better, worse, or indifferent if a cure for COVID comes out and everything's back to normal in March, 1 year later?
That's a really interesting point. I think what many advisors are going through right now, especially as they think about business planning for next year, which has been the topic I've been talking about the last few weeks, is, what have we learned about our vision for the business, and has that changed? I think a lot of advisors are going to have that conversation with themselves. Like, have I learned that I really do enjoy, working from home and having more of the lifestyle practice where, I'm still working one-on-one with clients and we're doing some of that digitally, or virtually rather, or have I learned that, I really want to build a practice where I'm face-to-face with advisors? So I think what's going to change is the way in which advisors view the next 10 years of their business. And I think folks should be having those conversations with themselves now. What have I learned, and what do I want to change? And what I share with advisors is, if you can't answer that with conviction, turn that question over to your clients. Here's what we've learned this year. We're thinking about changing a few things. How do you feel about that? Let them dictate what you change.
Yeah, that's huge. The lifestyle practice thing is a big one, because I remember you and I had this conversation, I think in like February, Penny, and that was almost a year ago, right? Which is crazy. But I think a lot of people set out to build something substantial, or, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think they jump into the business to build something great and build something that they're really proud of, and that can turn into something greater than maybe where it is at the moment. And then COVID comes in and it slaps this kind of new lifestyle on you that makes you look at your business maybe from a lifestyle perspective, and that's not so bad, and that maybe your vision or your goals change a little bit. So I find that dynamic really interesting. Like, do I build a business that can have an office and a team full of people, or do I build a business that can sustain kind of what I've gotten used to over the past little while?
I'm so happy you said that, because this has come to the forefront now, and whereas it wasn't so much, before COVID. How we define success in the industry for advisors has to change. I think there are many advisors coming into this year thinking, I need to get 10x the size. I need to get a billion in assets, because that's what, every advisor who's being featured in CityWire right now or in any publication is doing. And I think this year made them realize, if I have the ability to have enough time and capacity to work one-on-one with families and help them achieve outcomes during what was one of the most challenging years on record, then, that's success. And it doesn't matter what I have in AUM or how many clients I gathered this year. I made impact in my community. And that's a really important shift I want to see in the industry.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love it. You have to know yourself. It goes back to, and again, also goes back to the same way you would look, I guess, inward to yourself. You're also asking your clients like what they want. I think a lot of advisors also found themselves, and maybe they're trying something new, but maybe they only did face-to-face. And then now they're feeling pressure as if it's like a gym because they're being shut down. But anybody who adjusted to virtual isn't doing that. So I think you also have to ask your people what they want, and find some middle ground there. I think there's a place for people to find happiness and find success in happiness rather than just AUM, like you're saying. And I think it comes with figuring out what your clients want. If someone, an extra couple Zoom meetings, some might want to be in person. It matters how you want to run your business. But a lot, like you said, if you can't find your own answer, just ask your clients and they'll tell you exactly what they want.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, Penny, you've built yourself a nice business, and you have a really impressive following, and you've handled yourself super well. A question I'm curious to ask you, which I haven't, is when people get your ear, advisors specifically get your ear, what do they ask you? Like, what do you got? What's on their mind that they use that time to talk to you about?
Yeah, I often think about, and because I do a Wednesday wisdom. Nick just had a point here. Virtual doesn't mean bringing in less AUM. That's absolutely true.
Right.
In fact, most of the advisors that we have worked with this year, and I said that at the very beginning, like the best have only gotten better. So the most of the advisors we work with have had monster years from a numbers perspective. 30, 40, 50, 60 million in AUM, and they've done it virtually. So I can completely agree, Nick. The common factor for all of those advisors is that they are comfortable being uncomfortable. they can change and adapt on a daily basis. And I think that's the problem with our industry. And I'll answer your question in a second, Corey. But I use this as a great example. All of a sudden, in the past year and a half, and Corey, we've talked about this, you see advisors now trying to use LinkedIn and, putting canned posts. And because the broker dealer is telling them now, okay, you're approved to now use LinkedIn, when meanwhile, that's like, you should have been doing that 7 years ago. And so the advisors who are able to quickly adapt and change and sort of like march to the beat of their own drum have done very well this year. Back to your question. They tend to ask me, even the most successful in this business, what are other advisors doing?
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to force them to look at, like, you added 60 million in assets this year, and an X number of new families. Why do you feel as if that wasn't sufficient? Like, what are you looking for? When they ask me that question. The other thing they tend to ask me a lot about is team members, human capital. We've added next gen talent. We've added a person, and they're asking me what the development pathway is for them, and I don't know how to answer that question. So the questions tend to be very specific about certain practice management challenges, and it always opens up a bigger conversation about what are you building, how well do you understand your P&L, et cetera. But it tends to be very specific to how are other advisors growing, and how do I develop team members? I hate managing people.
So is there like this FOMO going on? Like I'm doing well, but like I'm afraid that the guy down the street's beating me.
100%. Yeah, again, this is why being a coach and consultant, people come to us because we force them to really think, encourage them to really look at how are you measuring success? And I think advisors are destination and not journey focused. And so all they look at is sort of the scorecard. And if they have a great year, quantitatively, but they've brought on less clients or have had to grind less to do that, they actually feel like they weren't as successful. So it's those.
Like they didn't earn it. Like there wasn't enough pain involved almost.
Exactly. That's exactly. Yeah. I see that a lot with the older advisors. Like, we didn't grind as much. What are we doing wrong? Or this younger person on the team is not, crying from, getting rejected 10 times a day, doing something wrong. And so, shifting belief systems is a big part of this. Yeah.
That's interesting. And hiring somebody is really tough. So I imagine when you're getting into that, you're like, you're still obviously in the advisor world, but that's where I find a lot of people. And I heard somebody use a term, capacity wall, where it seems like a lot of advisors are like, I did a good job building up my relationships, but I can't handle it anymore. But I'm also not that good at delegating. And that's a tough spot to be in. That's hard to do that because you're stuck doing all of your own work until you can do that or until you feel comfortable doing that. It's not something everybody's comfortable to do. How do you coach somebody who doesn't feel naturally managerial or is ready to hire and fire, when they need to? How do you coach those types of people to get in that mindset to hand work off?
That it's the number. If I had to rank all the questions we get, then the number one theme is, and it will happen to every advisory team in the business. At certain revenue points and at certain asset points, advisors hit capacity because there's only so much time in a day, and likely you've built your business, especially if you started out in a BD or more of a transactional type of business model. You've built the business up until this point with lower profited, smaller profit margins and lower tier clients. And so you get to a place where you're like, I can bring on the, $1 million client. I just don't have time to do that. The first thing I do whenever I hear an advisor tell me, I hate managing people and I'm not good at it, is ask them to reframe that. Advisors are in the business of managing people and emotions for a living. They do it with clients every single day. They just don't think of that the same way as they do in managing teams. The other thing I ask them so that's a belief system, like I need them to shed and really work on not saying those words anymore. But the other thing is that advisors, and this is the industry's fault and consultants' fault, we trained advisors to feel like they are the the all-knowing. In other words, like, they have to be the ones to develop people. They have to be the ones to identify, what tasks somebody should be working on. The truth is, somebody's development is not your responsibility as advisor. You have to create a culture of self-accountability and total ownership of roles. And there's a way you can do that by focusing on objectives, by onboarding new team members the right way. And so I asked them to rethink about the culture they've built. And then just tactically, advisors should be looking to hire, maybe this is a bit of a controversial statement, but if they're looking for somebody to manage client relationships and retain revenue, they should be looking, if they're in a BD especially, at advisors who failed out of the business because they couldn't hit their minimums, but are really great relationship managers. Failed reps are the number one profile of that associate advisor on a team. And I think advisors should be looking to add that talent to a team instead of us telling that person, you just failed out of the business.
And that's usually something when I go back to those posts of telling people, I guess, how to start almost doing that, depending on where you came from. Because usually, I guess, if you're failing out, maybe you were put in a sales position and you're a better advisor than you are a salesman. So like you're saying, you're tremendous at client services, where exactly I felt like I was, in terms like I can make anybody like me. I can make anybody happy, in terms, but picking up the phone and hitting quotas is, something that I wasn't good at. So it's I completely agree. And that I think there's a huge spot for people like the right-hand man position. I think it's hard to find those people, but there's a lot of people who like doing that, who like doing client services, and they have all the lingo. They have the licensure, or at least are ready to take the test again, whatever those. So I really like that idea, controversial or not. I think it's a good place. It's a good opportunity for somebody to keep doing what they like. And it's a good opportunity for you to be able to delegate to somebody you can trust.
Yeah, and we're seeing that trend a lot in BDs right now. And even in the RIA space, I get or in indie space, I get advisors who ask me like, I need an advisor with a book of business. And what I try to reframe for advisors is, if you are able to bring in as the main rainmaker 50 million in assets yourself, because some of the guys we work with are just monster producers. Why are you looking for an advisor with the exact same skill set as you? Is it because the industry is telling you that you need to do that? You're much better off finding somebody who can preserve and retain the revenue that you've been able to create, because clearly you're the rainmaker. And so I think once advisors get permission to build differently, they're comfortable doing that. But somebody who they consider to be a thought leader has to tell them that. That's a big trend that I'm noticing.
I love that. That's a compliment.
Yeah. Absolutely. Go ahead, Corey. Absolutely.
I think that's huge. Like, compliment your skill set. Like, don't hire 3 of the same people. Hire people that complement one another. And it just seems so obvious, but it's a challenge, and I understand it, and I'm sympathetic to it.
And I would imagine it makes advisors more money, but doesn't fix the capacity issue, because they're bringing on another person with another book of business, and now they have 2 problems, maybe 2 capacity issues with a bunch of money and stuff going on. But you're right, it's like if you had your hierarchy, I guess everybody always thinks like, let me hire this book of business because it's somebody coming over who's an established advisor. And your point is, ignore that part and bring in somebody, just to help you retain your revenue and help you with your book of business before you start, adding branches to the tree.
And we're generalizing here, but most of the advisors who are looking to buy books of business, which, by the way, as an inorganic growth strategy, attracting advisors who are sunsetting out of the business and buying books is a great strategy. Most of the advisors who come to us and say, we want to buy a book of business, don't have the infrastructure to support an additional 100 clients anyway. And so I always tell them, like, that's you got to be careful what you wish for with that, because there's a lot that you have to do to be able to sustain, that level of service for people. But the other issue is, and getting back to the sort of rainmaker versus revenue retainer roles, and I don't know why we dance around this, but it's really difficult to find a Gen Y, Gen Z person who out the gate has the ability to bring in 25 million in AUM. or whatever the metric is that you need in the organization. It for many reasons. I keep hearing from advisors like, why is this young advisor not doing the way I did it? It's like, because 50 years have passed and the world has changed. Like, that's the reason. Like, there's no secret. It just we need to shift our expectations about what the young advisors should be doing on our team.
That's tough. Yeah. I was just talking to somebody from Edward Jones, and they said the first thing they said when they walked in is like, there's certain things like you can't do videos, and you can't go door to door. There's the do not call list. So I was like, so you're calling businesses? And he was like, yeah, I'm calling businesses. And I was like, that's what you have to do. And that's the same thing that everybody's doing. So it's hard because if you have a venue like that and a couple thousand of you are all competing, there's a sure chance that you're both leaving a voicemail, possibly to the same person, especially if you're sitting in the same office and you're going local or whatever. I can't imagine it happening any other way.
This is a question that I have to ask Penny, and you just teed it up perfectly, Ryan. And I don't mean to make it uncomfortable for some, but I think it's a hot topic. And Penny and Ryan, coming from our perspective, from the outside in, now you, Ryan, not as an advisor, but now working in a different capacity, it's easy to opine and have an opinion on this stuff, but it's harder for the advisor. But Penny, we joke all the time, and you've joked for a long time, like, you should have been doing LinkedIn 5 years ago. You should have been doing this 5 years ago. Like, the world's going to change by the time your BD approves you to use the technology that is hot right now. How much should advisors consider the handcuffs and the rules and the box that they have to play in their current environment versus the other options that are out there for them?
It's a really good question. And I get as more this, and we've talked about this, Corey, more these past 18 months than ever before, obviously, do I leave? Do I look at other options or not? It's a tough question to answer, like with a blanket statement, but I do believe that advisors, and there's proof of it, can build within the confines of a BD, of an insurance BD even. Like, we know many, sorry guys, the light is like following me.
It's getting you.
It's but there are advisors who've been able to do that successfully and have built a brand, but those advisors have done it because, in my experience, they have very, very strong rainmaking skills, and they just have an ability to self-promote in a way that's sort of unique. Like, that's an X factor that you have. I think if you are a younger creative advisor who is routinely feeling two things, first of all, constant frustration on a daily basis about what you can and can't do, and two, you're feeling that the market and your consumer is dictating something different than what you can offer, that's when you seriously have to look at leaving and exploring your options. If your consumer is dictating something different or is starting to feel like they need a different experience, that's when you have to seriously take a look at leaving. And the other thing is, it's okay to change your answer to that. It's okay to feel like, okay, the BD was right for me up until this point, but I really want to have more freedom to engage with clients via video, and it's just too difficult for me to do that. That's an okay reason to leave a BD. There's so many options now, guys, for advisors. What's really important, though, is I hear from many advisors that they want to leave to be independent, and they go to do that, and they chase a payout, and they don't understand fully what comes with being independent. And so choice and option is great, but know that you are solely responsible for all the choices and options when you do go independent. Or do you?
I have to imagine that this leads to some sort of consolidation, because look, this isn't an LPL promotion, but we work with a lot of LPL advisors with MCO advisors. That's where Ryan's from, that's where the audience is, and the flexibility there for those guys to market themselves is so much greater than many of the other BDs. I have to imagine, like, if I had to put money on it, I have to imagine over time this plays out, that the BDs that are more liberal with their exploration of marketing and what they allow and being on the forefront of allowing their advisors to really be out there speaking like it's 2020, 2021 versus the more conservative BDs that are scared to take that risk, I have to imagine there's a consolidation or a transfer of talent.
No doubt. And I think what we're seeing within BDs, and you guys know we do a lot of work in the independent space. We have tons of LPL advisors. We also do a lot of work in the insurance BD space. And, I sometimes get called out for being overly critical of them. But I do think what we're seeing, Nick has a question, so I'll address that in a second. But what we're going to see internal at BDs is reflective of what's happening in the industry. So mass consolidation, but not just because people want to go somewhere where they have more freedom and flexibility, but because advisors have realized that building as a solopreneur is not only incredibly difficult, and the margins on the solo businesses are not as good as they were, years ago. But they need others. They need additional resources. They need additional people to be able to give clients what they want. So even within BDs, we're going to see, the super OSJs, which we're seeing now, and in the insurance firms, we're going to see, advisors flock to teams and firms as opposed to just going to work at, New York Life or Guardian Life. And so that's reflective of what's happening in the industry as a whole. And I agree with you. I think the next 10 years, and I've been saying it for every year, but it's going to be really interesting what happens in the independent space.
Yeah. I love this question, Nick. This is a good one.
Yeah. What will be the one thing I will be saying I wish I started in 2020? Yeah, that's a really good question. I often talk about why
signing up for MCO advisors.
That's definitely number one. Yeah. Surrounding yourself can support you in I being a Thrivos client. But I often talk about why I think Ritholtz Wealth Management is so brilliant in what they do. And we all know Josh Brown and the Reform Broker and all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I challenge advisors to start thinking the way they have thought. And it's not because they do something so totally different as it relates to investment management. By the way, do you guys read the Reform Broker blog? Josh Brown?
I do not. No, I'm familiar with Josh, but I don't read the blog.
Yeah. No.
Great. I mean, I've been following him for years. He's one of the best speakers I've ever heard. Their whole model is, and they called this years ago, people follow people, they don't follow brands and organizations. And so developing a personal brand with an audience, like I had heard him say once on stage that they only hire people, younger talent, who have social media followings. It's proof that they are able to put out content that carries an audience. They're able to connect with people virtually and digitally, and that they've been able to establish a personal brand. And so imagine, I thought that thinking was so brilliant when I heard him talk about that a couple of years ago. So what they do now is they have every advisor and every sort of technician in their organization has to have a personal brand, a personal blog, a video series that they do, and curate content for their specific audience. I think advisors in 5 years will be thinking to themselves, I should have put more effort and resources into developing a personal voice versus being worried about hiring a marketing agency to put canned posts on social media or rebrand or fix my logo. I think that's a big marketing misspend I see, like an obsession with, we need to have a new, logo, a new website, versus like start curating content every Friday. Answer a question that a client or prospect asked you that week, because there are thousands of other people who have that same question, and start to put that content out there. Corey, you know this. I built with my brands literally one block at a time, one follower at a time, doing just that, taking advisor questions and answering them for 10 minutes a week.
Well, it's so ridiculous, Penny, because I know Thrivos because of you. I don't know Thrivos because of Thrivos' logo.
Right, exactly. And, we've added, and I have a new venture dropping, as you know, Corey, soon. but we've now added coaching partners, and I only want to add people who have personal followings because, the Thriveless brand, I love the name and the brand, but people are attracted to coaches and consultants' style and work. Same with advisors.
Yep. It seems so easy.
Well, it's hard. I mean,
Specific.
people.
Yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. Hey, especially for Nick, what I was saying, something I just thought of based on his specific question. I would tell Nick, which I don't know if you do this yet, I would tell you to do a podcast where you describe your LinkedIn drawings, because I think it would bounce off of each other. So if you're doing something simple, pull out your LinkedIn and say, here, I'm pulling up this post from this, and this is my drawing, and just start discussing what it means to you and why you did it. Visually, like audio, the visual will come through and people will go to your LinkedIn and bounce back and forth.
That's huge, man. If he does that right, and they're like 4-minute episodes. In today's drawing we did, and here's why, and here's kind of the thought behind it. 4 minutes, and he's doing 6 of those a week. I mean,
build off of what you're already good at and you're doing. You already have a staple, I think, that everybody knows you for. I would just keep leading with that because it's going to take off. Like that makes you really different. Everybody knows Nick for his drawings, and I'd keep with that if you could.
What a good idea.
Thank you. Hey, Randy, how's it going, man? I talked to Randy. Randy believes in the handwritten notes for sure. I talked to Randy, and he's a cool guy. He's an intense dude, but he's really fun to talk to, and he really believes in those handwritten notes, and so do I. So I appreciate talking to you, Randy, and I agree. I think that personal touch does mean something. I like the idea of, and I think everybody says the same thing. I'm into scaling the unscalable. So I think everybody's thinking about what can I do to, I don't know, grab the most attention. I'm almost thinking about like, what am I going to do that takes a long time, that doesn't seem to make sense, but I know is going to create a huge impact? To me, those are the things that I guess move the needle, even though you don't feel it because you can't calculate it. So I like the idea of the handwritten note for that aspect and the personal touch that people don't get anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's harder with the younger gen, to be honest, although I love receiving handwritten stuff. I think the one thing, and I've been talking about this a lot with advisors, and this is where we get into the discussion of, do I leave my firm or not? Understanding data and analytics, using big data to make decisions about marketing and how you present yourself is really important. Advisors who send out newsletters, I always ask them, do you look at the back end data, like what people click on and what people open and what your rates are? We're obsessed with that information personally because it indicates to us what people care about. One of the posts I did got the least likes, but I had the most anonymous reach outs or people reaching out not publicly. That's indicative of something. And that's we look at that data a lot. The problem with the BD sometimes is, like, I have guys and gals who can't use like MailChimp, for example, and so it makes it really difficult to understand what the consumer is reacting to. But Nick, I would start doing more of that, understanding sort of the analytics that drive engagement. That's really important.
Nice.
Good questions.
There are good questions.
And Lindsay, I agree.
I sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Penny. I just find like it's matching the behavior that we all are ignoring. Like, we have to take our hat off and stop acting as this professional, like, and start acting more like a human. Like, all of us, if it's not Friday night, but all of us on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night are going to sit on the couch and realize that we have nothing to watch because there's nothing being produced anymore because the studios are closed. You've caught up on everything and you're looking for stuff to engage with. And whether it doesn't like a financial professional, I mean, you put Keith and Anthony together, I'm probably tuning in at 8:30 to watch some goofiness of what those two are coming up with. And they're friggin' financial advisors. Like, who would have thought?
Exactly. And that's such a great point because that's such proof of first of all, there happen to be really great actors, which is like that's kind of rare. Not everybody can do that.
I have a touch point on that after. You keep going, but I have a point for that as well that attaches to how good they are at something. But keep going, Penny.
Okay. Yeah, no, actually, for me, what I used to study a lot of stand-up comedy because I felt like I have to be able to be really good on the fly if I want to take my videos to be doing more podcasts and be able to speak. And so if you really, and again, this is how you have to be thinking. Like if you really care about your craft and you're going to go all in a certain marketing tactic, you have to be all in. But, you know, advisors, I can hear them saying, well, I don't like being on video and I can't possibly do that. And so I tell them to start with just recording your voice. Just record audio clips that people can play on your website, hearing you talk with conviction about something. People are going to be interested in Keith and Anthony, not because they're with LPL Financial. Sorry, LPL. It's because they have personal brands that we follow. Lynn says she's done stand-up comedy. I never have, Lynn, but I have done a lot of studying of it because it actually is really helpful with recording and inflection and tone. But if you ask those guys, they take what they do very seriously, even though they love to entertain us. Like there's a clear message they're trying to send, and they know what resonates with people. Edutainment, educating them while entertaining them. And I got a lot of flack for liking their stuff, but I think it's great.
And like, it doesn't have to be video or audio. I mean, we have Nick, who is awesome at the friggin' drawings, and like that works for him, and doubled down on it. And like, there's just, everyone has their medium and their skill set and their way of communicating, and it's just finding it and then applying the human side of it, and then we'll consume it.
And I think it ties into something that goes along with this. What if I'm not interesting? Or what if I'm not creative? Or what if I'm not, you know, I think something that people do will start comparing themselves. Like if you look at Nick's drawings and you say, I'm not going to post because I can't do that, then you're already losing for the day, in the same way that you're looking at Anthony and Keith being amazing actors. By the way, watching Keith crawl across the desk when he was screaming whole life insurance, I was literally laughing out loud in my car. I know they're always going to do something funny. I just did not expect that shit. So I was actually dying. But again, I do videos all the time, but if I were to look at Keith, I would and feel that way, I would say I'm never going to do another video again. There's an LPL guy who's like does amazing quality. He's super funny. He's a great actor. I'm sure he's like, it's almost like he's an actor and director playing as a financial advisor.
Yeah.
And then you don't feel like putting any content out, but you can't be like that because they did a lot of work to get to where they are. You know, Keith didn't just buy thousands of dollars worth of equipment and put it in his attic and he started being awesome. I'm sure he's got some talent, but it took practice. The same with Ruff and the same with Nick, of figuring out why do those drawings work. To even try it in the first place gave them a chance to see what actually did work. Imagine how nerve-wracking it could be to put out your first video where you're just shitting all over mutual fund companies. You know, it's not necessarily, and then it became a brand and it became hilarious and it became LinkedIn. You know, and I encourage everybody to at least post enough content to find your own voice and not look at other people's voices as something that's covering your own.
Yeah. I'm with you here, Mario.
Yeah, Mario made a really great point, and I completely agree. And you know, if you're thinking to yourself, God, I'm not interesting enough, you know, maybe, but, and they are, I had a conversation with Anthony yesterday. They are like that in real life. But look, I think you have to see
yes, they are.
the entertaining factor. Like they're making a commentary about the industry and about, you know, the value of, you know, thinking differently about training. You know, I had people who were really upset about that video who are clients. I was like, look, but understand what the underlying commentary is, and that's the beauty of it. When you have an opinion on something and it's an opinion that is shared by many others, that's what you have to go on. Like I'll get advisors who will tell me they'll never do a podcast or a video, and then they'll go on a rant to me on the phone about how, you know, here's a great example, like the way we define wealth management in the industry it has been diluted because people say wealth management, but they just do investments or insurance. And I'm like, that is such a great point. That's what you should record.
Yes.
Like, that is exactly, you don't have to be super crazy and funny. Like you just gave an opinion that would resonate with so many people. That's what you have to capture. And many of the older advisors, and I say older, like the baby boomer advisors who are like, I'll never go on video. They're very opinionated and they've been through a lot of shit. And there's a lot of gems. There are many gems that we can get if we have them sort of unscripted. I just think they've never even imagined that's possible.
One thing that we did at my old company was we had a guy there who had all this knowledge, right? But he didn't have enough to carry his own podcast or his own show. So we just took one of the junior marketers, 23 years old out of Princeton or whatever school they went to, and was like, do you want to do this? You host it. We'll feed you the questions to ask him and just bring color out of him. And it made for a brilliant little podcast that we created because you had a young, energetic person who could own the show and then ask questions of this person that was seemingly a little bit more dry and conservative, but you just mix the two together. You don't have the advisors can figure this out. This is not rocket science.
Right. Yeah, it is to them in some cases. Like, it's so funny. They could figure out these complex problems, and that's what they do for a living. But figuring out how to be themselves is the most difficult part. That sounded really deep, by the way. But it's sort of true, right? Like,
I got to give you a break. You're getting chased around your room there by the sunlight.
It's so crazy. I know. I'm sorry, guys.
Look, I don't want to keep you all day here, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So if anybody else has additional questions, let's get them in for Penny while we're jamming here. And there's nothing off limits. Let's go if you have them, and if not, we'll let everybody get back to their Friday. Looks like Ryan, did you freeze there?
Maybe he did.
Yeah, I think we lost Ryan. This way, other way.
I do love that you said that, Corey. Nothing is off limits. I think that's the piece. That's why what you guys are doing is interesting to me.
Sorry,
Ryan.
Keep going, Penny. I missed you there.
No, I was saying that giving permission.
Hang on, let's boot him for a second.
Poor Ryan.
So nothing's off limits.
Yeah, and I think that's really attractive to advisors who have been limited by so many things at the firm that they're at. Being able to create a forum where people really do have these kinds of discussions and don't hear the same sort of canned stuff all the time is important. So I'm a supporter of you guys.
And we're a supporter of you. I think it's just there's such a great community right now on LinkedIn of I joke all the time, like to myself and to Ryan offline, that if you could take the top 50 people that are really doing such a great job of lifting the boat, right, lifting the tide here on LinkedIn, you could build like the greatest company of all time. I mean, there's a really good group of people that are out there talking about really productive and good things.
I completely agree. Yeah, and he's back.
Am I back? Okay, because I was back talking to you guys when you said I wasn't here. So I was not frozen to me, but I was frozen to you. And I was like, what the hell? Super sunny outside, by the way. My internet just hates me. I don't know what to do. I'm gonna be here most of the time.
I think we're wrapping up here. If there's anything else we want to cover with Penny, let's do it. Otherwise, let's let her. She's got some stuff to take care of today for sure.
Bask in the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Penny, thank you for joining. I mean, this is fun, and I always welcome our conversations. I've never walked away from a conversation with you not enlightened and feeling like I extracted a lot of value out of it.
Thank you, guys. You're awesome, and I think I love what you're doing, and I think advisors who want to be part of honest discussions on an ongoing basis and get real advice should join your group. So great to be here. That's
a terrific endorsement. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Penny, especially for those 2 emails. I don't know if that was covered, but I saw that in the that I got, which was more than appreciated. Obviously, you didn't have to do that, so I appreciate that so much. If there's anything we can do for you, just let me know, and I'm happy to do it as well.
Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, cool. So you want to kick off and just drop out of the
close the show.
Okay.
Thank you guys all for listening and watching, and it's more than grateful. We had a good audience today and good engagement. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. I love doing this. That's so much fun when people ask questions. So I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry my internet kicks out every once in a while. That shit throws me off when I have to jump back in here. But it's good to have those conversations. Those are real conversations, and that's something that I felt personally, especially when we're talking about where you belong at a BD and stuff like that. That stuff is real. And it's not easy to think about. It's not easy, but a lot of people feel that in their stomach, and they're watching that conversation, and it just adds to the conversation that maybe they need to hear. And this isn't to say the bad broker dealers. I don't want to put anybody down.
Yep.
And everybody is where they are for a certain reason. And I hope you believe in it. That's the only thing. I hope you're happy while you're there. So if you're not happy, I think everybody should be. So that's when I think you make changes. Obviously, money's a big factor. Families are a big factor. But I think happiness should be your North Star. And that's what you should look for.
Look, let's leave people with the same thing we left people with last Friday. It's Friday. It's a more casual day. Get out and create content. Be visible. Get yourself out there.
Absolutely. Just grab your phone, start taking videos, chop it up later, like just start talking into stuff. That's what I did, how I started. I feel like I got better with time, but it's just about doing it and it's just about practicing. So get outside and have some fun. And
if you need more help, come find us.
Yeah. Shoot us some questions.
Cheers.
Thanks so much, guys. All right. I'm going to drop off here.
Good show, man. That was fun.
That was a good show. Remove. That was a good show, and I knew obviously with Penny being on, it would be an awesome show. So I was just excited to have her on.